Hi guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to shoot this bottle of tequila using only 2 speed lights. Hi, I'm Adrian and welcome to the channel. First I'm going to run you through the equipment we're going to use, and then we'll go into the detail about how we're going to actually get the shot and what we need to do that. For the lighting I'm going to be using 2 Godox V860s. Now these little speed lights, they're about as powerful as the Canon or Nikon brand, except they cost half the price. That's one of the reasons I like them. The other reason is this one here. So this is a lithium ion battery, and the advantage of this is that you don't need the 4 AA batteries like a regular sort of speed light does. And so that means a lot less batteries to charge. In the days where I'm using regular speed lights, it meant I had to have 4 for the speed light and I had to have 4 backup batteries as well. So if you've got 3 or 4 of these, you can imagine you could have 32 odd rechargeable batteries, which gets expensive, and it also gets time consuming taking them all out of the flash and making sure all of them are recharged. So instead I use this one battery. You can get at least 800 shots with this, normally if you're not using your flash on full power. We're going to trigger the lights with the Godox X Pro controller, and this one is great because it allows you to control the flash power directly from here. And you may not think that does a lot or you need that, but if you're running back and forth between the lights, taking test shots and tweaking your light, changing the power constantly, it saves you a lot of time, a lot of running around. You can dial in your lighting heaps quicker just using this one. The battery lasts forever on these guys, and it rarely misfires. I don't think I've had one misfire, in fact. For the lens, we're going to be using a 100mm macro lens. Now this is the Canon 2.8L series lens. This is a great lens for products and for portraits as well. It's very sharp. It creates a nice compression on the subject. I'm going to be shooting at f11, and that will allow us to keep the label sharp and also the top of the bottle sharp as well. And the shutter speed will be 1/200th of a second, which will sync our flashes nicely with the X Pro controller. And we'll be using ISO 100 just so we have a nice crisp image with very little grain. You can see I've got a bunch of other stuff, and I'll go through that as we put together our lighting for this. All right, first thing we're going to do is we're going to clean our product. Now I'm using isopropyl alcohol, or IPA for short, and this is great because it'll get all the sticky residue off if there is any, and it'll clean fingerprints and any grease off as well. And I'm going to use a microfiber cloth. It's really important that you clean your product well and clean the surface well, because it's so easy to get fingerprints on things, and it takes quite a considerable time in Photoshop to remove them. Yes, you can remove the dust and the fingerprints, but it's easier to spend 2 minutes cleaning the product first, and then you'll save yourself a heap of time later. And once you've got your product clean, what I've got it on is a sheet of glass, and I'm just resting it on 4 reflectors here. You could use anything to do this. It's just the fact that I've just found these lying around, and that was the easiest thing I could grab. And the reason we're going to use a sheet of glass is because when we create the background light, when we create the coloured light that's going to be behind the product, I want that to extend down past the bottom of the bottle. And so having the sheet of glass is going to give you that transparency to do that. Underneath the bottle, I've got a transparent table, and that's something I've made myself. The reason I've got this is because I don't want any colour from a table reflecting up onto my bottle. If you don't have the transparent table, what you could do is use 2 chairs and put your glass in between them, or you could use 2 sawhorses as well, and that's going to give you the same effect as having this. I've just used it for convenience because that's what I've got. Let's start on the background lighting now. So in the back there, I've got a roll of Lee Filters diffusion paper, and it's the 215 diffusion paper. And what that paper does, it allows the light to pass through it to some degree, and it'll give a nice soft light. It also takes the colour very well from the coloured light that we were going to put onto the background. And this paper comes in rolls, and I'm just hanging it from a C-stand with an extension arm, so it's very easy to do it that way. To get the background light effect, I'm going to use just an ordinary reflector. So this is a Bowens mount one, and I've put a grid on the end of it. So what the grid does is the grid's going to restrict the light. So So it's going to stop it spreading as far, and it's going to keep it nice and tight. So that'll give us a nice gradient effect by having this. If you don't have the grid, you don't need to use it. It just means that your light is going to spread a little bit more and have less of a gradient effect. So that just goes on the end, just like this. And to get the color, I'm going to use 2 sheets of gel. There we go. Now these are by Lee Filters, and they do a pack of these gels that come in all sorts of different colors. So the color I chose, I think it matches the bottle nicely. So it's important when you're doing sort of creative shots like this to choose something that ties in with your subject well. And to put that on the reflector, I'm just going to use some painter's tape. I'm just going to tape it on there. And tape it on there like that. You could do it this way, or you could use some pegs as well. That doesn't really matter how you put it on, just as long as it stays on just for the shot. And the other reason I'm using 2 sheets of gel, not just 1, is because I did a test shot earlier and the color wasn't as strong using 1 sheet, so I put 2 together just to give a much stronger, punchier color. What this is going to go on is, normally you'd use this in a studio strobe, but in this case I've got this adapter with a cold shoe mount on here, and that means I can use my speed light with similar modifier, or the same modifiers as I use for my studio lights. Then we're going to put our light in. There we go, that's what that looks like. Now it's not quite going to be the same as having a studio strobe, because the studio strobes have the bare bulb and they scatter the light around a little bit more, but this is going to still give us a pretty good effect. So we're just going to go, I'm just going to go over, I've got a light stand behind there, I'm just going to pop it on the stand, and it's going to be about the same height as the bottle. And what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to move this up and down depending on where you want the center of the glow effect or the gradient effect. And you're going to need to move it side to side as well. And that's going to move the effect around a little bit. You'll do this when you're doing some test shots. So I'll just pop over here and put that on. Now I've got that light set about that far away, which is 2 or 3 feet away from the background. You can move it closer and further away, and that's going to spread the light more or constrict it more. The closer you go, the tighter that color is going to be, and it's not going to spread out or feather as far on the outside. So what we'll do now is we'll do some test shots, and that's just going to be for our background light. We're going to dial that in, and then we're going to worry about lighting the label afterwards. Put everything on. I'm going to focus. Once I've focused, I'm going to set it onto manual so it doesn't move, because I'm not going to be moving the camera. Okay, so what I've found is the glow isn't quite in the middle, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to move the light across just a little bit, and I'm going to move it up a little bit because it's a little bit low. And to some degree, all these adjustments are going to be your creative choice. It's going to depend how you want it. It's obviously going to look a little bit funny if your glow isn't very centered or your gradient isn't very centered. But you can make it as big as you want or as small as you want. That looks pretty good. We're going to also adjust the power a little bit. It's a little bit too bright, so we're just going to bring that down. We can do that on the controller here. As far as the power level goes, it's going to depend a lot on which strobe or speed light you're using, and how close it is to your subject, and how much separation you've got between the subject and the background, so the distance away. So you're just going to do this by eye. You're going to keep dialing it in and adjusting it until you get the effect that you want. That's the beauty of digital photography, of course. You can see exactly what you're getting, so you can dial that in pretty quickly. The distance I've got between the background and the subject is probably about, 4 feet, just over 1 meter. That's kind of what you need. If you have it too close, what you're going to end up with is, when we put our label light on, you're going to end up with light from this spilling onto the background, which we don't want, which is going to weaken the color effect. It's going to make it a lot lighter and paler, and it's just not going to look good. So after we've dialed in the lighting for the background, we're going to start lighting the label. So we're going to use a Seagull speed light for this. We're going to aim it down, just pointing at the label. And what I've got here, just a piece of cardboard. I'm going to make a quick 30-second snoot, bit of painter's tape on there. And this is going to stop the light spilling onto our background as well. So when you do these sort of shoots, it's all about controlling the light and putting it where you want and keeping it away from where you don't want it. So that's all it is. It's just comes around there. Having that around there is going to stop it spilling out the side. I'm just going to mount it on a umbrella holder here with a cold shoe mount. Right, so we'll do a test shot now. Right, that's pretty good, but we could have the label just a little bit brighter. So we'll adjust it from the controller here. Again, this is just going to be a case of trial and error. You might want to take it right up until we've got some white on there. I like to push it until we get overexposure on the white parts, and then dial it back just a little bit, and then you know you're pretty close to having a good exposure. And the reason we've also got this light up the top and not pointed straight at the bottle is because if we point the light straight at the bottle, you're going to get highlights, really harsh small specular highlights on the glass, which I don't want. By keeping it up high, you're going to get that highlight just along there. It's going to be quite small, and it's something that can be easily retouched later. And if you didn't want to retouch it, you can stop this by using polarizers. So you could use a polarizing sheet along on your light here, and you could put a polarizer on the end of your camera as well. And that's called cross polarization, and that will completely get rid of any highlights on that glass. And I'm not going to bother in this case because it's just as easy in this case because there's only one bottle. It's going to take 10 seconds to Photoshop that out. One other thing I've got a flag up here, and what that's doing, that's just a black piece of foam core. It's on a C-stand, and I've just used a grip head on the end of the C-stand just to hold that lightly just in place. Now that's just a little bit above the top of the bottle and the top of my frame of the camera. And that's going to stop any extra light that does happen to spill from this speed light onto the background, and that'll cut that out completely. You could actually have that quite close to here, but it's just a convenient spot to put it, so that's why I've put that there. Next thing you may notice is this bottle has foils on it, so that's the gold sort of colour, and some bottles have silver. It's pretty common with winemakers and liquor or spirit bottles to have some sort of foiling on the label, just to increase the wow factor of the label. When you shoot with strobe though, or speed lights, that normally means that often those won't be lit up properly. So what we're going to do in this case, we're going to use a piece of white foam core. You could use a piece of paper or a piece of cardboard. And we're going to just angle it up like that, just a little bit, just until it almost hits the lens, and then we're going to take a shot. And what that's going to do is going to bounce some light from there onto here, and then it'll bounce it up onto the label, and that'll mean that all the gold parts will come up nicely lit. Yep, that's got that. So that's looking really good now. Alright guys, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please remember to like this video and also subscribe to the channel. And if there's something you want me to shoot to show you guys how to make a video on, please do leave a comment below and I will see what I can do. Thank you very much.